for JEA official monthly board meeting. Can I ask everyone to please stand for a moment of reflection, and after that, Lisa Weatherby will lead us in the pledge of the flag. Thank you. Lisa?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lisa. Chair will accept an adoption of the agenda.
So
Motion.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you. Safety briefing. Jay, welcome, sir.
Good morning. Jay Worley, Director of Environmental Programs. I do want to say, you were talking about people moving up. I've always observed that if it's a free event, nobody sits up front. But if you pay for it, everybody comes up front.
All right, we're going to
Start charging. Very good, Jay. Very good. Okay.
I think I was going to work out a revenue issue. Get that? Revenue issue?
You want a second on that?
Thank you for the idea. We'll put that in the minutes.
I do want to provide a safety moment. In case of emergency and the need to evacuate, of course, the stairwell is to the left of the elevators. Just be careful as you're going down and the hazards in the room of the people in the chairs, and make sure to hold the handrails as you're going down. We'll meet at the corner of Main and Ashley, which is the parking lot for the church. In the event of an incident, Angie Hires has graciously accepted to call security. Thank you. And Monica Whiting will call 911. Fire extinguishers are also located to the left of the elevators, which we won't use in the event we have, other than in the event we have to utilize them to get out, but we'll let the firefighters fight. Anyone in the room CPR qualified? Thank you, Jane. As was stated, please turn off your cell phones, and please note that the restrooms are located immediately to the right of the elevators if needed. I've been with JEA for 28 years. Prior to JEA, I was with Southwestern Electric Power Company, which is out of Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm currently the Director of Environmental Programs, and I work with Bud Para within Public Affairs. Our team works closely together to provide comments for JEA, of course, for proposed environmental regulatory regulations that are proposed. And we do that, of course, not only for JEA, but also public power, our industry, our customers, and our community. I'm responsible for JEA's air and continuous emission monitoring program, environmental resource program, which includes wetland, stormwater, wildlife, above-ground storage tanks, which encompass all water, electric, and sewer. And I'm also responsible for electric facility environmental compliance. In addition, I'm the lead to JEA's renewable energy program. I had the opportunity to begin my career at JEA in 1985, working at St. John's River Power Park as environmental engineer, as well as assuming numerous O&M lead positions throughout the 23 years. I was born and raised in Louisiana. My grandfather's professor at LSU. My aunt was an administrator at LSU. My mother, my father, my sister, everybody in my family, all the cousins to LSU. Therefore, it was only probably normal I didn't go. I went to Northwestern State University of Louisiana.
Did they win that game last weekend?
Strike that from the agenda.
I assume that's what you're looking for.
No, I didn't go to LSU. I'll pull up the title. I got undergraduate and graduate degrees from Northwestern State University of Louisiana. I've been married to the most wonderful woman for the past 33 years and have 2 grown children, a son that's a paramedic and a daughter that goes to Florida Atlantic University and is a junior. A few interesting facts about myself. I met my wife on the CB radio in 1976. So I can't say anything about internet dating. And also, my wife and I just returned from a 10-day Canadian cruise yesterday morning and saw Quebec. And I got to check something off the bucket list. I saw the Northern Lights. And just FYI, when I was 8 years old, I wanted a rabbit. My father's a physician. He was eccentric and bought me a South American anteater, which I kept for 10 minutes after my mother saw it. But
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Presentations. Monica Whiting, JEA's Great Tree Giveaway. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a very quick and brief presentation for you this morning.
That'd be tab 328.
Just to share about a promotion we have going on right now with our customers. As you know, we've shared in some of our previous updates that we do offer several programs to our customers that we'd like to get more participation on. Our participation rates are lower than the industry average, yet they are very they give us high satisfaction from our customers. So e-billing is one of those programs. What you'll see is that for fiscal year 13, we did have significant increase in the number of customers that signed up for e-billing, but we'd still like that to be higher. Again, you'll see that customer satisfaction rating for those that participate in our e-bill program is higher than those that don't. Some of the benefits of e-billing: it does provide convenience for the customers. It is also an environmentally sound and positive program in that it saves trees. So, for instance, the number of customers that we currently have on e-billing saves 36 trees annually based on the paper that is saved from not having to print and mail the bills, as well as it's more cost effective for us in that it saves about $150,000 annually in postage and paper, which helps us keep rates lower for our customers. And that is growing. So for the month of October, we are doing a promotion for our customers where the first 2,000 customers that sign up for e-billing, we will donate a tree to them. I'm happy to share that in our first 2 weeks of the program, we have had over 850 customers sign up for e-billing. What's fantastic about that is what on the previous slide you saw is we had about 2,000 customers sign up in all of 2013. And so to get 800 in a few weeks is fantastic. A few hundred of them have opted for the tree. And we believe that as the month goes on, more will. We've gotten fantastic response from customers, great photo opportunities of customers and their kids picking up the trees. And then for the trees that customers don't want, we will be partnering with local agencies and donating those trees to be planted in public spots. So a really fantastic program. I'd also just like to share a few other items in the last few weeks that have gone live from a customer satisfaction and program perspective. One of the pieces of feedback we have heard, and I know some of you had heard as well and raised to us, is that for customers who pay their utility bill online, that it had to be paid that moment or day that they were paying versus picking the date that they paid. That went live last week, and so now customers who pay through JEA.com can actually pick the date that their bill gets paid as opposed to it having to be at the moment they're online. Our mobile website went live as well in the last week, which means that for those people with a smartphone, when you go to JEA.com, it's not this really small screen that you have to pinch and expand. It actually is more conducive to a smartphone, and we've gotten some good response there. We have refunded or in the process of refunding about 10,000 deposits to residential customers. These are customers, our old policy was that we would hold deposits for 3 years. If you are a customer with a good payment history, we are refunding the deposits now after 2 years, getting a good response on that as well. And another item that just went live that I hadn't shared about is, as you all know, for identity protection and verification, when someone calls over the phone to start service, we do an identity check. In some cases, that doesn't line up. In the past, what that required is then people had to drive into the office and show IDs. Experian and the different credit bureaus do offer different solutions that we can do to do further identification over the phone. We have implemented that, and we are seeing about 50% of the customers taking that choice, and so we're able to do some further verification, get them identified over the phone, and so about half of the folks not needing to drive in, half of the folks still opting to drive in. So those are some of our new options in the last month that have rolled out.
Mr. Chairman, may I say to Monica, since most of the board members now are using iPads, we're saving a tremendous amount of paper, and I just wondered, is it possible that the board could have a tree?
I bet we can figure something out.
Sign up for e-bill.
Just a thought.
Sign up for e-bill. Sign up for e-bill.
Could we just get a cactus for Mr. Townsend?
To pass on?
Oh, I think we give him a honeysuckle.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
a question. You know, I recognize the campaign because I've seen it in the city. And the electronic billboard, I think there was a big one. I can't remember where, which is probably the beauty of advertising and marketing. But, you know, what are the venues that you're using to get the message out, right? Besides the billboard, is it paper, television, from a media blitz?
I will have to defer to my lifeline, Ms. Upton, on all of the different tools. I know that they are
Yeah.
using a span of tools from Twitter to Facebook and different items, but Jane, do you mind coming up and sharing?
Not at all. Primarily, we're using the billboards and we're using radio. We didn't do television because it really didn't warrant that, but we're using social media and a lot of billboards, though.
Yes.
The social media is getting a lot of conversation. Because we're going in a finite period for 1 month, we were worried. We didn't know whether we were going to get a run on the trees and run out of trees, and we didn't want to dissatisfy people. So this is a learning experience for us. We've never done a promotion like this where we actually gave something away.
Yes.
So we've done some things, but we haven't done everything that we could just to see what the response would be. But we're very happy with the response so far, and we're learning a lot for future endeavors.
And I think to clarify, the billboards are the electronic billboards, correct?
Yes,
So I
exactly.
think part of it was really keeping it focused too on who the target audience is and the ability for us to quickly change the message if we need to, pull it back if we have huge response in that. So,
That's smart.
very good.
On the,
Thank you.
on a lot of these things were electronic, are we putting some of this on in billing where they go out? So, I mean, a lot of people don't travel, don't do social media. Some of us still live in a cave, dark ages.
We did, again, because we didn't want to create more demand than we could meet, we put it on the back of the envelope. We have 2 versions of the envelope. So if we run out of trees, we'll switch to the other version. But then in the actual bill insert, we talk about just signing up for e-bill and the benefits of that. But we don't have the tree giveaway because we didn't want people at the end of the month to be upset if there were no more trees.
Do we have access wouldn't that be better if we had to go get more trees?
More trees.
Wouldn't that, at the end?
I would think so.
Yeah, we could figure that out if that's what we ran into. What we tried to do was we worked with Kim Wheeler and the team as far as existing programs that we have with trees, but certainly if we had an overwhelming response, we could work through that. So.
Are we, then at the end of this, all this is just extraordinary. I mean, it's just kind of it's really showing a lot of good things, and I would think it's really going to show on the survey. Is there a way that we can reinforce that, 30, 40 days after that, maybe the next billing, that we do something that everybody understands what has been accomplished, what has been
Absolutely.
achieved?
We can do
So
some
that
of
we
the,
don't miss.
and I know on, one of the weekends, or the first weekend, Jane was out at the tree giveaway, taking pictures, talking to customers, so that we can be telling that story, in our newsletter, on our website, and doing that. So we absolutely will look to do that.
Thank you. Great ideas. Thank you.
So, fantastic. Thank you.
Terrific, thanks. Comments? Any others? Comments from the public? I see none. Unfortunately, our council liaison, President Bill Bishop, is not going to be with us. He has a committee meeting. So we will move on for room numeral 3 for board consideration. Under the consent agenda, we have number 1, 2, and 3 are actions. So I think, just for the sake of the minutes, I'd like to go ahead and read the 1, 2, and 3, which are for action, and then the others are for information. Number 1 is the approval of the board minutes of September 16th, approval of the board retreat minutes of August 27th, and approval of resolution FY 2014 budgetary transfer action. If I can have let's go ahead and move that.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And then 4 through 7 are information. I'll take a motion for those.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, have the minutes good. Strategic B, strategic discussions and action. Sole Source Energy Procurement Report. John. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Go Navy.
Go Navy.
The Army.
What about Ohio State? Huh? You want to mention that to it? No.
They win every week. It's gotten boring. I'm John McCarthy, Director
They do it all the
of
time.
Supply Chain Management at JEA, and also the Chief Procurement Officer. And in my role as Chief Procurement Officer, I lead a team that manages most all of JEA's procurements, including our sole source and emergency procurements. And since for these types of procurements, we do not seek competition, we provide added transparency by providing a report to the board on a quarterly basis. And I'm going to take just a few minutes to go through that report. I've got a few PowerPoint slides that are going to tie in to the actual report that's in your packages, and we'll get started there. For background, it's a quarterly informational item to the board for added transparency. It comes with a cover page, a summary cover page that covers the most recent quarter's activity, separated by formal and informal items, and then it follows with pages that cover the actions over the last year. I'll take just a second to walk you through the cover page if you've got it in front of you, just to do this once so you can see how it flows. There's a narrative section, and then there's some numbers underneath. And so for the most recent quarter, we made 41 formal awards that totaled just over $100 million. Of those, one was a formal sole source award for just over $1 million, and we had no formal emergency awards. And then the informal awards are shown below, and you'll see we had just over $10 million in informal awards during the quarter, and a couple $100,000 in sole source and emergency items. This chart here is also in your packages, and if you look at the FY13 Q4, those are the numbers I just went down, which shows the total awards, the sole source, then the percentage, which is just the sole source awards over the total awards, then our emergency awards, and then you get a percentage, and then we have a combined percentage, which for the last quarter was 1.31%. And so if you go back the last 4 quarters, you can kind of see that we're running about between 1 and 2% each quarter. I think our average is 1.5%. And through the benchmarking we have done with other utilities, it seems like 5 to 10% is a range that most utilities fall. So we seem to be managing this a little tighter than a lot of the other companies. I went the wrong way. In the packet on the last page are the formal sole source and emergency items that were made during the past year. In your board package, you'll see those 4 awards that are up on the slide with more detailed information. At the last meeting, I went over those bottom 3. The highlighted item was made this most recent quarter. It was a $1.1 million sole source award to Hewlett-Packard for hardware and infrastructure. And the justification for that sole source is, HP has resale partners that they have, and if we bid that item out, the resale partners would be able to bid, and HP has an internal policy that doesn't allow them to bid if their partners bid. And through our due diligence, we found that if we go directly to HP, we can get a better price. So we go sole source to them, and we don't put that out on the street. This next slide is not in your packet, but just shows a 3-year look at the activity. And outside of the one blip, you can see the process is in good control and stays within that 1 to 2% range, and we feel that the controls are effective. So that's the report. Again, it's just to add transparency since these are not sent out, since we do not see competition on these items.
I think this is my 6th or 7th year on the board, and I can see that consistency, and I think you and your staff need to be applauded for that. Did you say 5? What was the percentage you say?
Between 5 and 10, it seems. We call it the collectric membership,
That's
just to
almost
get
ridiculous.
get a reference.
Yeah, but, so impressive. Kudos to you and your staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a question of clarification. This seems to be primarily hardware and software
The
purchases?
HP award, yes.
Okay, and, all right. And is services included in this?
Not in that award, no.
Okay.
Just for, and again, I'm not sure, I can't remember, is there some attempt to make sure that we're trying to use local vendors as much as possible?
Yes, yes, sir. And I can, if we bid out and it's only price, there's not, sometimes we'll have a minimum qualification.
Right.
That they have a local office. But then when we send out an RFP that's qualifications-based, where we evaluate quality and price, we'll award more points for local offices.
Good, thank you. Good clarification. I just want to make sure that for people listening in for the minutes, that we are attempting to do that.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John, appreciate it. Any other questions? Thanks, sir,
Thank you very
appreciate it. Real estate acquisition status report. Matt?
Good
Sir,
morning.
welcome.
Thank you. My name is Hamid Zahir. I'm the Director of Shared Services. That's kind of overseeing the facilities operations and maintenance and capital in our enterprise asset management for facilities, the Maximo and the GIS business analyst groups, and also the real estate group, which I'm here to provide you with the update. Since the last meeting, the good news is that we actually don't have any condemnation activities on our plate. We have completed everything since last report 3 months ago. And the better news is that going forward in the next 3 months, we don't foresee anything to be coming to the board for approval of the, condemnation of properties. The packages that you have also include some mapping of the prior projects that included some condemnation of properties, total of 18 parcels. That's for information. But as of today, we do not have any active condemnation activities. And if you have any questions.
Just instruction, who do you report to?
I report to Melissa Dykes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate it,
much.
sir. Good report. Bi-monthly financials, Melissa. Rolling, you're going to follow in this great positive news, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I am. This month's financials is going to be focused on our year-end financials for fiscal year 2013, since we've just closed the book on that year. And in the interest of starting on a positive note, we ended the year in fiscal year 13 with some very strong financial metrics, which we'll be able to present to the rating agencies at our annual meeting coming up in December. In the electric system, we showed debt service coverage equivalent to last year at about 2.7 times. We were helped out very much on the debt service coverage metric by some lower interest rates. We were able to refinance and take advantage of low short-term interest rates, and that combination fed this higher debt service coverage number. Days cash is pretty close to last year. We've actually got a couple more days than we ended the year with last year at 129, and that was driven by primarily by low fuel prices. So our fuel reserve is ending the year very healthy. And debt to asset ratio is about 76.7%, it's rounded up here, down from 79 at year end last year. So continuing to chip away at the mountain of debt that we've got on the electric side. The targets that are shown on the far right-hand side of this page have not been updated yet to reflect the new pricing policy because it's not been approved yet, but that's later on the agenda for this morning. If you're interested in the changes to those, there's a footnote at the bottom that shows what those new targets will be based on the draft pricing policy that you reviewed at the last board meeting. Water and sewer system, similar story, very strong debt service coverage this fiscal year, 2.4 times, driven by refinancing activity and low short-term interest rates. Days cash is 110 days, so not terribly different from last year, but a little down from last year. Our debt to asset ratio is 59.2%, so not even truncated, it rounds to 59%. So we're inside of 60%. for the first time in a number of years. From a sales perspective, the news is not quite as good. What we saw this year, so starting with 2012 was a bit of an outlier year. It was very, very mild weather, and sales were below 12 million megawatt hours. And when we got to the end of the year, we thought that was an anomaly. When we got, now finishing the end of fiscal year 13, we're actually showing sales year over year below fiscal year 12. And some of that is weather driven. We had a very, very mild winter, and we had really no meaningful winter to speak of this year. But what's interesting is when you look at the weather data is, and I'm going to flip to the next page so you can just see graphically what this looks like year over year. When you get to the weather data, this year wasn't quite as mild as you would expect based on this fall in sales. So there's likely something else going on here, and we'll talk about that when we get into the sales projections for the next 5 years going forward. Just for context, it's we were about just over 3,800 degree days for fiscal year 13. In fiscal year 12, we were about 3,600. So even though we jumped that meaningfully in terms of the number of degree days, our sales actually went down. And I think it seems to be indicative of the trend in the electric system driven by energy efficiency and economic activity.
It seems to be in your wholesale and your commercial and industrial.
Much more so than residential, yeah. We are seeing.
Residential is actually up a little bit.
Residential per house consumption is down, but we are seeing growth in the total number of customers on the residential side, which is more than offsetting the drop in the per home consumption. Actually, interestingly, on the residential side, if you looked at median consumption per home 5 years ago, it was just over 1,200 megawatt hours per month, or kilowatt hours per month, excuse me. In the last fiscal year, we were below 1,000. Per home, which is just a meaningful difference. And again, some of that is weather, but some of that is efficiency upgrades. And as a data point, the Load Research Group recently did a survey of our residential customers, going into homes, looking at outlets for light bulbs, and just surveying what's plugged into them. And they found that about a third of the light bulb sockets in our service territory have converted to CFLs, or something that's non-incandescent. That means that 2/3 have not. And they're going to stop manufacturing incandescent light bulbs at the end of this year. So this is a trend that we expect to continue at least for the next few years.
What are you going to speak about your commercial wholesale trends there?
I can touch on that a little bit. I will say our Load Research Group has that as a project that's in progress right now.
Okay. Interruptible service, is that something that's being discontinued?
The interruptible rate is closed currently. Under our current policies, we are going to reevaluate that in the first quarter of this year to see if it merits reopening. There's nothing that makes me think that we would reopen it at this point, but it is currently closed. There were some incentives around that rate class that caused shifts in consumption for the interruptible class. What's interesting on the commercial side...
But we have excess capacity, so nobody's ever interrupted.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it was a gimme almost to the wholesale buyer.
When our load is growing from year to year, and we're looking at having to make incremental capacity decisions, that interruptible class is very valuable because we can potentially avoid adding capacity by having customers that are willing to be interrupted. But for that very reason, we're going to do the analysis by policy. We have to do the analysis this quarter, but I don't anticipate that it would make sense for us to reopen that class. And in terms of the commercial customers, to go back to that earlier question, what we're seeing in terms of consumption is a very meaningful correlation with economic activity on the commercial side. After 2008, we saw a very big drop in the commercial consumption. And there is a correlation with taxable sales. When we look at our model, we're seeing the commercial consumption increase with an increase in taxable sales. What's very interesting about that, though, is that prior to 2008, it was a very predictable increase in that sector, driven by taxable sales that is meaningfully different than it is post-2008. So while that directional correlation is still there, increases in taxable sales are directionally correlated with increases in consumption in the commercial sector, it's not nearly as big a driver as it was before 2008.
so there's probably efficiencies in the system.
Yes, or it's business customers that recognized opportunity to save in utility services and are not ramping back up in spite of taxable sales increasing.
Melissa, on that point, just from some of the, as Paul and I both sit on the chamber board, yeah, particularly in the area councils, in the chamber councils, the small business folks, there's a discussion that when it kind of went down, people had to step back, and there's been kind of some of the quote conservation that was going on in homes got transferred over there, and people were finding that small business that they could find ways within their own business to do that, and it was paying off. And there's really a kind of a chatter that is going on that people are doing that, and it's a good thing from their perspective because they're saving money. So, you know, one, economics, and two, they saw that they could save money, and now that they're beginning to see a little bit of progress, they're being much more checking their money and conservation of electricity.
Yeah, and that seems to track what we're seeing in terms of sales numbers.
Rather than just taking it, laying down, we're going to need to find some new drivers of electric sales.
I wholeheartedly agree. In terms of what this means for the financial picture, our sales, like I mentioned, are down about 0.4% year over year. Sales are about 8% below budget, which translates into a revenue shortfall this year of about $72 million. We have made up that shortfall through a menu of options that you'll see on the left-hand side of that slide, some of which we expect will continue to be available. There are things that tend to move around as sales decrease, and some of which may not be available in future years. So as sales continue to be challenging, we expect that to be a continuing challenge from a financial perspective as well. Two of the things that helped make up this shortfall significantly, though, are the savings that we were able to achieve in O&M expenses of almost $30 million in fiscal year 13. So very, very significant performance in expense savings in O&M. And in capital expenditures as well, we were about $34 million below our budget in capital expenditures. That $34 million, as we've talked about in some prior meetings, is a reflection of the really great work that's been done in Mike's team to inject a very significant amount of discipline into capital expenditures in the electric system. And that discipline is in project selection, it's in scope of the projects, and it's in managing the projects themselves. And just to give you two quick examples of some of the biggest line items that went into that savings, there was a big outage at the Brandy Branch generating station in the past fiscal year. It's an outage that comes every 5 years or so at that generating facility, and they were able to generate some pretty significant capital savings, but completing that outage project. And another good example is in our fleet area, which was one of the largest capital savings there. We had been setting a capital budget in fleet and going out and purchasing fleet vehicles according to that budget. And this year, we really took a look at what was in our fleet and made some strategic decisions about how we were deploying vehicles and whether or not we needed to spend that money. So it's not necessarily all deferrals. There's some meaningful capital savings in here as well.
Didn't you have a transfer of $16 million from, I think it was a restricted fund?
Restricted fund. I may have to look into that and get back to you. I'm not quite sure.
I think there was a transfer that
Okay.
you asked us to approve earlier in the year.
There was, in terms of contributing to solving the revenue gap,
Yes.
there was a transfer. We had an overfunded amount in the debt service reserve fund,
Yes,
and
that
that was driven by a change in the requirements after some refundings, and that amount was released, and that did help to serve as that's in the menu item, the debt service savings and reserve release.
And that's really a one-time.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that requirement will continue to change as we continue to take advantage of refundings, but it's not something we would expect to be there every year.
Melissa, just a quick question on the 29 million savings on O&M. Are there any big items there, or just a lot of different things?
Mike, can I ask you to comment if there's anything that jumps out on the top of your head? And otherwise, I can follow up with a list of some of the largest line items.
Yeah, Brian's comment was no hurricanes this year, so we've had some storms, but we haven't had any big storms.
Okay.
A lot of it is vacancy of positions. I think a lot of it is.
That was one of my, yeah.
We, you know, when things get tight, we look for areas to reduce discretionary spending, travel,
Okay.
overtime.
Yeah. That's good. That should be noted at some point, just to show that you're managing up, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I'd be glad to add that as a summary.
Melissa, though, on that point, though, how are we sort of sitting down and projecting, all right, we're doing this year, some of this is probably, one, good management, being fiscally responsible, but as we look in, coming back on what Peter said, we see this drop in revenue. Is there some time that you're going to be coming back and saying, as we look out 2, 3, 4 years, we may be hitting a wall here, we may be squeezing as much as we've squeezed? Are you going to
That's
be
an
coming back?
excellent segue question into a presentation I'll do later in this board meeting.
Okay.
In this board meeting, I'll cover the next 5 years from a sales perspective, primarily concentrating on what our assumptions are going to be around sales. And then in the next board meeting, once we've finished our capital plans and really have drilled down on the financial metrics, then I'll show a better picture of what that looks like over the next 5 years.
Mr. Chairman, can I also suggest too, maybe not at our next Finance and Audit Committee meeting, because that's going to be, December 8th or 9th? But maybe the one following it, we maybe could expand and extend, and have more dialogue on that, so we can report back to the board.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
I really think that may be something where we may want to have that as a whole meeting with everyone to be there, because I think that's really, I think from a fiduciary responsibility, the quicker that we can all hear that and begin to think through that, I think that may give us some opportunities to think as we look strategically and as we begin to plan and budget. So maybe we can, Mr. Chairman, when you hear that, maybe we may bring that to this and have a discussion as opposed to the finance, if that'll be okay.
Yeah, that will affect how you do your base rate
We don't have an attorney
calculations
there.
as well.
Our attorney's there. Thanks, I didn't mean to interrupt.
In water and sewer system, we are showing sales down year over year in this system as well. Now, this is driven by some very interesting weather patterns. If you just look at total number of inches of precipitation for the year, this is not the outcome that you would expect. You would expect people to be watering their yards more because we did not get as much rainfall as we did last year. What we did get, however, is a lot more days of rainfall. So if it rains for 20 or 30 minutes in the afternoon, people turn off their sprinkler systems and don't water, and that's one of the biggest drivers of this difference in sales year over year. And this just, on the next page, just graphically illustrates that year over year, where our sales were down quite a lot this year and driven by this number of days of precipitation.
So, but in the past, if I remember correctly, in the past, Ms. Jones, you can help me here, this is a different thing as opposed to the days it rained. We have just said inches of rain. And so, if you have it all in 1 month and you end up, it's gonna change that. So this is really a new statistic that I think will help us as we plan going forward. So I
Yes,
think
and
that's-
we're going to start reporting that in the Green Book as well, so you'll be able to
Very
see
good.
that every month.
I wouldn't discount some secular changes here, too. There are appliances that use a lot less water, and people are much more sensitive about that. And, there's a sense that to be green, to be friendly to the environment, we ought to use less water. And that's becoming kind of part of the way we operate in this country. And this is not going to go away.
Yeah, I agree with that. Our load research group is looking at that as well. The challenge for this year is that we were such an outlier from a days of precipitation perspective that it may be masking other behavior changes. So it may take us a little longer to get to the bottom of what's going on in our water consumption. From a financial metrics perspective, we actually finished the year about $3 million over our total revenue budget. And the difference between, the reason this is a different conversation in water than it is in electric is because so much more of our revenues in water really reflect our fixed cost structure. They're fixed revenues that are not dependent on consumption. And we're seeing that protection that's built into the rates show up in our financial metrics for the year. So even though sales were significantly down, we're not suffering as much from a revenue perspective. We did have some success on the O&M expense control front. We're down about
But
3
I think there's a lesson in that.
Agreed. From an O&M expense perspective, we're down about $3 million versus budget. In capital, a similar story to the electric side, we're about $31 million under budget on capital. This is the new page that's been added that shows our debt and debt-to-asset ratio over time. Our debt load is one of the only metrics where, from a cost structure perspective, we're really an outlier relative to our utility peers in the region. And this just gives you a picture of how that's evolved over time. So it did ramp up to a peak in 2010 on the electric system and has been slowly ramping down since then and is projected to continue to fall. In the water and sewer system, the ramp up was associated with a very large capital program that the water and sewer system undertook in the late 90s and early 2000s. The good news about that from a capital perspective is that type of program is one that we're going to see other water utilities have to do. Some of our competitor water utilities have to undertake, and we've already gone there. We've already paid the dues, so to speak, on that. And then we do expect that debt-to-asset ratio to continue to improve over time as well.
Now, we do have some more. We have a nuclear facility that we have to pay for sometime in the future, is that correct?
That's correct, starting in 2018.
2018, that's the date, okay. So we can continue to make pretty good progress till then, and then we're gonna have a bump up.
That debt associated with that nuclear facility is not actually counted as debt on our balance sheet. It's where we pay for that power through a power purchase agreement.
Oh, okay, all right. It's embedded in the cost.
It is embedded in the cost of the
Okay.
PPA, that's right.
All right.
Right. Here, a question, and I know you probably already told me this 1,000 times, right? But if we stay on that current trajectory, right, that trend, right, how many years out would we get to the point where we retire the debt?
Will we retire all of it?
No, we don't want to retire all
No,
of
I
it.
mean,
We want to
to
get
get to the
60
point.
and 50.
Yeah.
To 60, 50, to the,
Yeah.
to the bar that we're looking for.
Yeah, you want some
We're going to
financial
get,
aid.
I'll talk
won't
about
be
the
this
5-year
board
projection
or the next one.
in just a few minutes, but my recollection is that in fiscal year 18, if we stay on our current track, then we'll have repaid about $700 million in the electric system, so our debt-to-asset ratio will be
So right-
inside of 70%, about 60.
So that coincides with the
67%.
nuclear
Yeah.
thing, okay,
Yeah, that's right.
thanks.
That's 66%.
And this just gives you a picture for the composition of that debt as of the end of this fiscal year. I'll point out a couple of line item changes on here. In terms of fixed rate bonds, we did see an increase in the electric system, but that's offset by a decrease in our hedged and unhedged variable rate. That's basically de-risking in a low interest rate environment. And a similar story in the water and sewer system bonds, an increase of $52 million of the fixed rate principal outstanding, but then a more significant decrease in the unhedged variable. This is a recap of the refunding transactions that were done in the last fiscal year. It does take our debt staff about 8 weeks to bring a transaction to market, about 2 months. So with these 6 transactions they were able to get done last year, they were running about 100% of the time doing refundings through the year, and we're able to achieve about $53 million in present value savings by doing those refundings.
That's impressive.
Very impressive.
This is the picture of our weighted average interest rates as a result of all that.
Now, may I ask, we've had an extraordinary period. I would assume that we're pretty much running out of this kind of,
Refunding.
these kind of savings, aren't we?
I don't think we're going to see anything close to the level of savings that we saw in the last year. We are, however, rolling down the yield curve, and we've got call dates that continue to come up every 6 months. So I don't think we're going to see $53 million in present value savings, but I hope we'll be able to continue to lower our overall debt cost through refundings.
Are
Kind
you,
of depends on what happens to the interest rate environment.
That's exactly right.
what are you conservatively anticipating, hoping for? Though hope is not a strategy.
Sometime.
Hope would be an interesting strategy. If I can get back to you on that one, I'll be able to, I can put a chart together that
it's
quantifies
not in
what
the
we might
minutes.
see in today's interest rate environment on that. In terms of weighted average interest rates, there was a little tick up between last year and this year, even with all that refunding activity, reflecting the fix out of variable rate debt. So that variable rate debt is very, very low cost, but we've de-risked quite significantly this year. The variable rate debt risk analysis, no changes in this page since our last board presentation, other than a few updates, we do have a Sumitomo facility that we are in the process of renewing to try to keep some of that geographic diversity in our credit book. And next month, we will add our line of credit providers to this as well, so you can monitor counterparty risk associated with our liquidity source.
The best way to de-risk variable debt is to have only as much of it as you can stand if it goes crazy. So it's really a volume as much as anything else. Sometimes the hedges work, and I have to tell you, sometimes they don't.
No change in our credit ratings since the last report. The last credit rating change we had was an upgrade from Fitch to AA flat in the electric system, and we're poised, based on the metrics that we talked about earlier, to present a good story to the rating agencies coming up in December of this year. And on the investment side, this is another little spot of good news. As interest rates have gone up in the market, it is taking away some of our refinancing opportunities for savings, but giving us a little more yield on the investment side. So our yield is up since the last time we did this report in our investments portfolio to about 66 basis points. And as our investments continue to roll off and we reinvest in new products, we'll continue to see that increase.
Lisa, did you have a?
I do, thanks. Melissa, I seem to recall from the last rating agency meeting that one area that they kind of keep a close eye on with us is our liquidity. Are we pretty good to go? I noticed we were within the targets that were established by us, but are we okay with the targets established by the rating agencies?
That's a great question. The agency that's the most formulaic about it is Moody's, and they've said at our rating level we should have 150 to 250 days of liquidity on hand. So the combination of our cash, which we have on our balance sheet now, and the allocation of this new line of credit, which we've just put in place with the Bank of Tokyo, gets us to well over 200 days, which should be a great story for them.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Lisa.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Just to follow up on what Lisa was talking about and some of the comments by Peter, I think this year's rating agency, particularly since we have a full board and we've new members, I think this is going to be a very important rating agency trip.
Great.
So I really think as we begin, I mean, for a lot of them who have not been, I think that we should probably be thinking about, one, we're going to have a great presentation, but I think there's going to be a lot of learning and listening from our perspective, particularly on some of the comments that both you and Peter have brought up. So I think, Mr. Chairman, as you get through that finance, as we get ready for that.
We're ready.
Okay, but I think we'll do a lot of listening and asking questions. So I'm encouraging everyone to make sure that we can try to be up there for this year for that.
Mr.
Good
Chairman?
Report, thank you. Yes.
And perhaps I should have asked earlier, but, I think that report was at the very end good news, right? I mean, we're doing well. My question is, how do we get that good news out to educate the public and the city council that we're being good stewards, right, over their assets and things? Because obviously, they tend to, sometimes the press only focuses on the bad news. This is good news, right? And, is there any effort on our behalf, either through the media or visits to the council, to make sure that they understand, the complexity, right? So they can appreciate what we do, right, what you do, and also the fact that we're doing a good job at it. This is an opportunity to do that.
To answer the question, I have not had this time to talk with Paul, but what I think, given where we are and where we're going to go forward, is I'm not sure who's going to be coming. I don't know if Bill Bishop is going to be going with us. Who will be going with us? Do we know? From the council?
No, it's council president, not.
All right, well, then and then we may, and I think we have a good relationship with the president of the council. I would probably encourage us to think about, shortly after we come back, to make a presentation to the council. Paul is doing a really good job of keeping us and his staff there, but I think this may be one of those things where we proactively, coming back, maybe have a joint presentation with President Gulliford to the council, bring them up to speed of where we are in that first month of January, early in January, so they kind of know where we are. And I think Jane will do a good job of making sure people understand what's being said. The other part is having the aides there, and I'm pretty sure that with Jane's connections with some of the local press, I think we'll do a good job, so, on that.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I don't disagree with that. I just kind of caution, I don't think anyone would ever agree that we're doing a good job. I think I concentrate more on results and let them make the interpretation. But I think in the end of the day, we are doing a good job, but that wouldn't be the selling point, just
Yeah,
results.
I think we would make a presentation on the, maybe the progress or what we're doing.
Making
and we
Yeah,
do that.
the trend, right? So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
got,
And
we
let
got
them-
some ammunition to be
Yeah.
proactive.
Exactly.
And get on the offensive. That's all I'm saying, as opposed to taking a
Absolutely.
defensive posture because the numbers are trending the wrong way.
We'll encourage Jane to kind of be thinking about us putting something together shortly after we get back, early in January. It might be a nice thing where we can maybe roll in customer satisfaction during that same time. We can maybe do the two together. Get two bites at the apple.
Before we move on, may I ask Melissa another question? Melissa, do you expect any changes to our ratings? Certainly should reinforce where we are, but I don't think the changes are significant enough to bump us up.
No, I don't.
So basically just solidifying
Yeah.
where we are.
Our outlier rating is Standard & Poor's on the electric system, where they're doubling minus A plus, split between senior and subordinate. I'd like to say our metrics are strong enough that we can ask them for an upgrade, but they've explicitly told us that until Vogel comes online, they won't consider it. So no matter how well we perform, we're gonna be where we are until Flint Vogel comes online.
Why is that?
Because there's some risk around the construction and the ultimate cost of the facility.
Okay. And
they're
they
not
can't
comfortable-
quantify it.
That's right, and they're not comfortable upgrading us with that until that's.
5 years from now.
And and the date of that is?
18?
Yeah.
The cost is going to increase.
Well, you know, that may be part, just on that part, is to make that part of, if not a footnote or something, as Jane is working with our reports of, when people ask, why don't we see it tick up, that there's an understanding, at least from that rating agency. I think, again, it comes back to the communications and letting people begin. There would be, a lot of people who really want to know will be informed, and we can get that message out, so. Yes, Helen.
In conjunction with the release of the annual report, is there anything done to educate the citizens who are really our shareholders about the results, other than releasing the annual report?
Paul, Jane?
Not knowing,
No,
not having seen it
historically,
before.
as Mr. Townsend points out, we post the results on the website in terms of the annual report. That'll be in early December when we review with the investors, certainly the proxy for the investors and the rating agencies. It's been a cautious give and take in terms of, how much you communicate, not so much the facts, that's fair, but in terms of the rounding out the story is a bit of a challenge for us. We certainly will consider that this year. I think the other point to recognize that at some point in time, clearly if you focus on the rating agencies and the ratings, there's only a certain maximum amount that you really want to get to. I mean,
Yeah.
you want to stay in the AA range. That gives us clear access to capital, it gives us good interest rates, and gives us flexibility in our trading activities, whether it's the fuel component or the electric component of our. Much beyond that, you reach a point of sort of diminishing returns and significantly higher requirements in terms of liquidity and margins and coverages. And so we end up charging our customers more for sort of idle cash and financial returns. So we're at that point now where I'm not sure that pushing the envelope much further, sustaining where we are is critical for our future success, but pushing much further in terms of improving the credit profile, we've got to look at that and see what the positives, what can we gain from that, as opposed to just being able to charge our customers more and put it more in reserve. We really don't want to be AAA. At some point in time, there's not a lot of value in that for our customers.
Now, are you challenging the targets of 60% and 50% for the, no?
No, that is the one outlier, as Melissa pointed out.
That gets us within the normal kind of range
That
for
is
a double A.
absolutely correct.
Because we've had a double A and been an outlier, which I think is,
Yes.
I applaud you for doing
Yes.
it, but that won't go on forever.
So what will happen essentially as we run down the debt, we're way overweight on debt for our credit profile, but we're above and weighted heavily on coverage, on operating cash flow. So that balances and keeps us in that AA. As we move that debt profile back down more in line with our peers, we'll take a little
Gotcha.
pressure off the operating cash
Exactly.
flow. And so it is a balancing act as we move forward.
Yeah, and since we're getting 66 basis points and we're paying over 400,
Yeah.
you know, that would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? The fiscal 2013 pay for performance financial. Angie? Welcome.
Thank you.
Always glad to see our Chief Human Resources Officer.
Thank you. Well, I think it's very advantageous on my part that I get to go behind Melissa after she gave that favorable finance review. So fate is in my favor at some cases. Okay. At the May 21st board meeting, the board approved the fiscal year 2013 Pay for Performance program. This approval continued our practice of incenting our employees to achieve performance as determined by the comparison of the annual aggressive targets. And this type of program has definitely served to encourage our employees to focus not only on their individual performance, but the collective performance of our organization. As you may recall, we had 3 areas of focus, and these are outlined behind tab 3B4 in your board books. And I will reiterate those: the financial O&M productivity, which was focused on our O&M budget spent versus the allocated O&M budget, and our customer satisfaction, which was benchmarked against the J.D. Power Electric Industry Customer Satisfaction Survey, and our safety, which was measured against JEA's OSHA Recordable Incident Rate, or RIR. We are pleased to report that the JEA team has accomplished a great deal this past fiscal year, and we've had some significant achievements. Much emphasis was placed on the continued cost and expense control related to the O&M spending for the fiscal year, and the O&M spending for this past fiscal year was less than 95% of our allocated budget of $380.8 million, which resulted in approximate saving of $31.5 million. This savings allowed achievement of the highest level of the payout for this particular goal. On the customer service satisfaction front, JEA implemented a very strong strategic approach to improving customer service satisfaction that engaged employees at all levels of our organization, giving them and affording them the opportunity to participate in projects throughout the organization to help drive our customer service satisfaction. This strategic approach resulted in JEA being recognized as the most improved utility in the nation by the J.D. Power 2013 survey. This placed JEA at the top of the 3rd quartile. This achievement, again, met the highest level goal that was established by this metrics. On the safety front, a goal of an OSHA recordable incident rate of 1.2 or less was established. JEA's RII for this particular fiscal year was approximately 1.8, leaving us a little bit short of meeting that goal. But while the ROI is 1.8 is pretty significant in the industry and is considered one of the best in the industry, that's not considered good enough for us here at JEA. We're committed to holding firm to our goal of 1.2 for an IRI, and we will consistently push that forward for the goal for a year of the 2014 and continue to focus on that. Based on the achievements that I've mentioned, the payout to support this program will equate to approximately $1.9 million out of the savings of the $31.5 million, and this would equate to about a $1,000 payout for each eligible employee. The payout of approximately $1.9 million equates to only 1.47% of the annual salary dollars, so we'll see that it's less than 1.5% of those dollars. It is recommended that the board recognize this excellent performance and superior services of the JEA team and approve the pay for performance plan for 2013.
Thank you, Angie. For the purpose of putting us in the proper perspective, position, I'll take a motion.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
just make a comment, as I think I did the last time we heard this. I just want to be careful when we say we're the most improved in J.D. Power. We had a long plate, we had a ways to go, so let's be careful with that. I mean, we are, and let's celebrate it, but not for too long. I realize we're at the top of the third, and we want to get to the second, but just my comment.
Yes, sir. Good point.
Good clarification. Any other comments? Yes.
One question also, if I'm reading this correctly, I'm thinking as I explain this to my neighbors, right? For every dollar we spent on incentive, we got $16.50 back in savings. Is that correct? All right, so that's the way Joe the plumber can understand it, because if he could spend $1 someplace and get 16 bucks back, he'd spend that dollar every day of the week, right? And so I think, as we massage the message, and, you can take the numbers, but you can make the numbers say what you want, right? And that's what we want to say.
Yes, I think that's an excellent point, because let's be, when we talked earlier, we said transparency. I think as we roll this out, I think to Chairman Townsend, I think we need to be accurate. I think we need to be matter of fact. I think we need to put it in terms that our customers and our public understands that. I think shows great improvement, but I think we need to put it in a way that we can then benchmark that and then come back every year so that people understand that, everyone understands what they've done for this year, and we should not, that should be celebrated, but I think that we need to put this in the proper language, Jane, so that it's not the expectation, it's not so much the expectation, but I think it's the understandability, because I think that's really what we want to do, is maintain our credibility and the integrity with our customers. So I think the wording is going to be extraordinarily important for credibility and the integrity of the process. And I would encourage that, but absolutely we should celebrate where we are. But I think the words are going to be really important as we go forward. Just an observation.
I agree.
Point well taken.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. No other, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Should pass unanimously. Number 5. Angie?
Me again.
Yes.
Okay.
On a roll.
Okay. Since the Pay for Performance program was introduced back in 1999 here at JEA, we definitely know that it's proven to incent our employees to focus on continuous improvement and achievement. This was definitely demonstrated in our past fiscal year as we made some definite strides. While the team at JEA feel that we did have a great year in 2013, we insist on raising the bar higher and not resting on our laurels of 2013. During this past year, JEA redefined its mission, vision, and values, and it has energized its workforce with a whole new set of strategic initiatives for this current fiscal year. And in order to make sure that there's alignment, employee engagement, and continued stellar performance, we're incenting the JEA leadership and employees by recommending 4 key metrics for the fiscal year 2014. Once again, we will have customer service as one of those metrics. Again, we will not rest on those laurels that we achieved in 2013, but we will definitely keep pushing forward to be, again, the most improved utility, as well as placing in as high as we can in that second quartile. For our safety, as I mentioned earlier, we will be definitely rolling that goal forward of achieving the RIR of 1.2 as far as our OSHA recordables. And the last 2 key metrics and areas of focus are the cost control measures on both the electric and the water side of the organization. JEA is committed to holding firmly to non-production costs for services delivered, and we're going to make wise budget management decisions. On the cost control side for the electric and water, we want to make sure that we do not exceed the baseline of fiscal year 2012. We want to be measured against that. If JEA meets these goals at the highest thresholds of the estimated savings will be over $8.5 million. The shared cost savings in the payout will be approximately $4.4 million, which equates to about 3.39% of our annual salary dollars. This would be a great method to once again incent our employees, as participants in this plan have not and will not have received across the board a cost of living increases. It is recommended, again, that the board take action to approve this performance pay program for the fiscal year 2014. Take into account the 4 metrics that I've outlined.
Thank you, Angie, for the to position this. I will take a motion for the recommendation.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Angie, the savings that are estimated are quite different from the 2013 year, but you're asking at the highest level for there to be an increase in the payout. How do you kind of justify that pretty significant change from last year's pay?
Well, the payout last year was approximately about the same thing, the 4.4 million. However, we came in less because we did not achieve the top goal in safety. And the savings that were due to the O&M productivity for this year was I don't want to call it a windfall because it was very good cost control by Mike and Brian, but I would say that was probably somewhat of an anomaly.
Okay. And my other question, just in reviewing the materials prior to the meeting, is how does the regular JEA employee, how do they kind of impact the O&M savings in their day-to-day activities? I mean, if they're on a call center, how is it that they can, are they actually participating in the potential savings, or can they affect that, or is that just something that's done at a higher level that they don't really have access to affect?
No, they can affect that. Number one, although we want to make sure that we're rendering the efficient and effective customer service to our employees when they call in, as many calls as we can take without having hang-ups or having employees not get answers, or being put on different types of payment programs, which in turn incent them to pay. Also making sure that they're utilizing any resources that they have in their area effectively and efficiently. And that can be done at all levels of the organization, regardless of what side of the organization an employee works.
Okay, so they can actually affect the numbers. Okay, thank you.
So while one is O&M on this part, the customer service part helps balance them and brings them into the equation, so they feel like they've got skin in the game, and it shows where they are participating in a part of the, quote, the team achievement, so to speak.
Exactly, because we ask each employee, regardless of what side of the organization they participate, is to look at ways to control costs on their side of the organization, such as in HR, I tell them no more than 3 pens a month.
I have a question. Angie, I think you mentioned.
Tough.
All right, everybody take their pens home with you.
I'm holding up my pens.
I think you mentioned cost of living in there, or the lack there. Could you explain that again? I'm not sure I heard that correctly.
Yes, there has not been across the board increases or cost of living for our employees.
For what period of time?
This for about a 5-year period.
Okay, all right. That's significant to me, because what that says is, instead of rewarding people for longevity, we give them an opportunity to earn it every year.
Exactly.
And that counters anybody out there saying we're paying folks for doing their job, right? I would venture to say that a cost of living is, if you want to take that stance, is would be an even more egregious offense than giving up people the opportunity to earn incremental income. And I don't know if we've ever positioned it that way, but certainly in my conversations, that is a major a point for anyone who handles a budget and a payroll. They understand that what do you get in return for a cost of living increase with regards to productivity, efficiencies, and things. The answer is nothing.
Well, sometimes you get employees.
Yes, retention, right? But if the people feel that they can exceed that with the incentive pay, your retention goes up even more.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, I agree with you,
Yeah.
but within certain parameters, obviously. If we get way out of line with our competitors and with other opportunities, then we do have problems too. So we have to watch that. We can't, we just can't assume that we can hold the line indefinitely.
I agree. And someone once said, he has the most facts wins, right? So if we could take a 5-year look at what a cost of living increase would have cost us over that time period and compare it with the payout, right? I would have a little bit better understanding of what I'm trying to express here.
No, I think it's an excellent point. I think is particularly, I mean, to your point about facts, I think this also works from this perspective. One, if we're going to make a presentation to the city council, as I shared with our CEO, we need to be prepared. What has been said here is going to be in the paper within the next probably 24 to 48 hours. So I think that putting it in context, I think is one important. It's transparent. Number two, facts will, for those people who are rational and understand what we're doing along those lines, will agree. And if they differ, they will disagree on the facts as presented. We will always have those folks who don't have anything else to do but to criticize, and there's nothing, any facts or any sense of transparency is going to make them, they have nothing else to do but to ping. But that's their choice. But I think we put it in context,
Yes.
put it out there for transparency on the facts, and I think as we go forward, so I think that the cost of living, I think, is extraordinarily important, particularly when you sort of put in context this environment, and then when you look at our customer base in this region of Florida. So I think that's an extraordinarily important part to make that part of our message.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the comments from the board.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we have a motion? Any thoughts? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show it's passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, and you've probably picked up on a lot of these comments already. Thank you. Number 6, JEA 5-year financial assumptions. Melissa's back. Aha.
I'm back.
You're back with the questions we were going to ask. We asked you earlier, right? Answers to the questions we asked you earlier.
Hopefully a few of them anyway.
All right.
This is the first half of a two-part presentation. The second half will be at next month's board meeting about where we're going over the next 5 years. So this half of the presentation, we'll talk about our assumptions around unit sales growth, some of our assumptions around our revenue requirements and rates, and our total debt, and then summarize what we'll look at for next month's presentation. In terms of what our sales forecast, electric system sales forecasting is a bit of art and a bit of science. The single biggest driver by far of electric sales is weather. So without having a crystal ball and knowing what the weather is going to do for the next year, we attempted to come up with something that is both more normal in terms of sales, normal meaning normal weather patterns, but that didn't wholesale shock our projections and gives us some time to get to an adjustment. And what I mean by that is, and I'll talk about what we're going to assume for the next year in just a minute, when we did this forecast back in 2008, and looked at 2014, we thought we were going to have 14.2 million megawatt hours in 2014. The new projection that we've outlined here is 12.2. So it is a very significant change in the way our customers are using their utility services and the magnitude of sales that we'll have in the utility system. And we are projecting that sales pattern, it's 12.25 million megawatt hours in 2014, and that's going to grow at 0.5% per year out through the 5-year projection period. And that is inside of our growth in number of new meters. Our growth in number of new meters is just shy of 1% right now, but this reflects the fact that our customers are getting more efficient and that our incremental customers will be incrementally more efficient. So our growth isn't quite as much as our growth in the number of new meters. In the water and sewer system, for sales projections, we are projecting 35 million kgals for FY14. That's roughly equivalent to where we were back in fiscal year 12, which was a much more normal precipitation pattern, but which followed the rate adjustments that we'd had over a number of years during that time period. So we think that that's an approximation for a normal sales pattern in the water and sewer system for more normal precipitation, and that again is growing at 0.5% per year.
Melissa, what's your, maybe it's on an upcoming slide, but what's your thought about housing starts?
It's a great question. One of the factors that goes into our forecast for sales looks at vacancies and returning to a more normal vacancy level over a number of years. We have seen a pickup in housing starts, and actually the biggest place we've seen it financially is in the water system, where we've seen a significant increase in capacity fees that are helping to offset some of the lower revenue that we've got in consumption. And that's built into the model. So we're not all the way back to a normal levels of occupancy and starts. But this projects us getting back to more normal, but very, very gradually.
Thank you.
From a revenue requirements perspective, this chart is one you'll be familiar with from our rating agency presentation last year, which demonstrates financial responsibility to the rating agencies over the past number of years. Looking forward, we do expect stable rates from 2010 through 2014, and then we'll continue to evaluate our revenue requirements after that as we see what the what our projections around financial metrics are going to look like past 2014. We'll talk about financial metrics more in next month's presentation, but as a preview, we think we'll be at about 2.2 times projected debt service coverage in the electric system for 2014, and then we will have some challenges in the years after that, particularly in 2016 and 2018. So more to come on that next month. And then in the water and sewer system, we are projecting stable rates for the forecast period at this time. What this means from our total debt load perspective, between the electric system and the water and sewer system, based on regularly scheduled principal payments, between now and 2018, we project we're going to pay down about $1 billion in debt. About $700 million in the electric system and about $300 million in the water and sewer system. This assumes we don't issue any more new money debt. We have over the past number of years said we are not going to be issuing any more new money debt. For discussion next month, there may be an opportunity for us to debt fund some additional capacity needs in the water and sewer system. And those needs are specifically to serve new customers and new load that's developing on that system that may be appropriate to debt fund based on our discussion next month. But if we debt fund nothing and just repay our regularly scheduled principal payments, we'll pay down about $1 billion over 5 years.
Now, over the past two, we've paid off about $600 million.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And so just to summarize, in terms of unit sales growth, we're looking at about 0.5% per year. Base rates are going to be stable over the next year. Our fuel rate will continue to be variable, and that'll just be a reflection of our actual fuel expenses. The capital expenditures and internal funding, we're expecting no new debt, with the asterisk that there may be an opportunity in the water and sewer system to debt fund one of those capital projects in a couple of years. In terms of total debt and variable debt, $1 billion reduction, and then stable O&M, debt service, city contribution, and stable metrics that are a result of these. Are there any questions on that piece of the projections? Or any further discussion on the assumptions we have in here?
Go ahead.
Did the renegotiation of the city contribution come into play in your assumptions? Because I think it falls somewhere within this 5-year period.
It has not come into play. We're assuming it for these projections that contribution remains stable.
Okay. Stable with the increase as it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'd like to get into more detail on this in the Finance and Audit Committee. So if you could kind of be prepared to give us a year by year as to where you see kind of the problems developing.
Absolutely.
Based on our current rate structure.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm thinking, where you made the comment, we're going to have a couple challenges. One, if you can kind of give us an idea, maybe what the framework, where they fall under, and then two, at this point, I mean, ballpark it, like what would be some of our alternatives? What would be the options that we would have to look at that, of how we would address that? Again, gives us that chance to begin, as we do our strategic plan and assist you all in that. I think that would provide, one, this group, but particularly the new board members who, as they move toward those years, to help them understand that. And I think that really goes back to all of them sitting on the Finance and Audit Committee. I think this is going to be extraordinarily important for them to understand that. So if we have those options, and I think will be helpful to all of us, but particularly for those.
Great.
We won't be here.
Great.
Any other questions?
I think that to the extent that we can flesh out in detail the challenges that JEA will be facing in the future, that may be of assistance when we go to the city council on the negotiation side for the contribution. Just to say, look, for that. So I think that would be really good.
It's not business as usual is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
I think that really kind of goes to the facts, transparency, the facts, and the basis of the projections.
Right.
So that there is understanding as much as we can.
Great.
Any other comments, Melissa, on this? Okay, your last number 7, pricing
Last
policy.
This is a request for action to approve the pricing policy. There were 2 minor modifications in this pricing policy since it was presented to the board last month, and I'll just point out the 2 that were there. One is an administrative change. It adds the word principles after cost of service. So JEA will develop a price structure that's based on cost of service principles. That was an edit we received from our rate consultant. And we've changed the debt to asset target from 60% to 50% in the water and sewer system to better reflect where our peers are in water and sewer debt to asset ratio. Otherwise, the policy is what you reviewed last month.
Okay.
Any discussion on that policy?
I will do a motion, please, and proper, motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Comments, discussion, any other questions? All in favor of the recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show of thanks. Thank you, ma'am, appreciate it. Members, that concludes our JEA board minute. We now have, is there any other new business to come before the board? Any old business to come before the board?
I have a question. I don't know whether it's new business or old business, but as we look at our future financial outlook, we keep talking about behavior changes. And my question is, I know we have in-house talent, but in terms of research, what research have we or should we be doing to determine how those behavior changes are going to impact our business?
Outstanding question.
Overall,
I think the,
just for clarification, behavioral changes in what area?
Water, sewer, electric, conservation.
Customer behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay.
if
I
I'm.
would assume there's some industry research
Yeah,
in this area.
If I may, there's considerable industry research, and we stay very closely connected and involved with the American Public Power Association, as well as the Large Public Power Council, looking at this, and that really would be probably my only comment on the report. As we heard a lot of these emerging issues and trends that have either an adverse impact on revenue or how we generate and deliver power, it's not unique to Jacksonville, Florida. It is an industry norm. The industry grew at essentially 3% over the up until 2008 for the prior 30 years. We are all experiencing, from an electric side, a substantial increase, and it's flat to 1 at best across the board. So we are watching the emerging trends certainly in California, what's going on in rate structuring in terms of customer satisfaction. A couple of our, Mike is involved with AEIC, American Edison Institute, and there's a large trade group there that meets. We've got Mike involved in the distribution side. We've got one of his key managers involved in the generation side, emerging in terms of new technologies, and also on load management. So we cover that waterfront in terms of collecting information, making sure we're tied in to what's going on. And there's just a variety of other opportunities for us to gain information. So we stay plugged into the emerging trends and marketplace activities.
Okay.
Along those lines about emerging trends, I just saw a recent article, maybe you, many have seen it as well. Central Florida, about solar energy legislation going on right now to bring back the incentive. Last time they did it, it was so popular they had given half of what they promised, right? A lot of noise around that, but is it just noise, and did that really impact us as far as, have a significant impact on us?
The one program that I'm aware of that was highly oversubscribed, so in one might say successful, would be in Gainesville. And Gainesville had essentially what they call a feed-in tariff rate, so they established what they would pay their customers at essentially 3 times what they were charging customers. So there was an enormous incentive to establish solar for those high-income people that had the capital to invest in their system. That now is causing a very significant drain. They have just raised their rates more than 10%, looking at another 10%, and that's combined with a few other issues they have. So we'll look at that closely, but in our marketplace, our concern for the growth of solar is what's been emerging in other areas, is that those that have the means to place solar on their residential and businesses, but residential primarily, those that have the means, middle and upper income, are leaving the middle-low income with the cost of continuing the electric system generation distribution. So there really is a cost disparity occurring.
Yes.
And so as an industry group, both the investor owns, and I've spoken with the leadership of Florida Power and Light as well as TECO and the munis, that we have a net metering program that will feed that issue in a very adverse way for our community. And it is causing havoc in California and other high adoption rates of solar. They're debating now publicly how to deal with that. So we're going to move forward, at least hopefully over the next number of years, with our friends at the IOUs on this issue to see if we can get a more stable approach for pricing for us as this emerges.
That's the idea about the connection fee would be.
Yes, and
the
absolutely,
base
the
rate offset
connection.
that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other whole business? Managing Director, CEO's report.
Other than my comments, I'm good.
Okay, nothing for the chairman, except to thank everyone for being here and for all the good input. If no other business come, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great day.